My sister Fiona looked me dead in the eye at our family reunion and said, "It's honestly embarrassing how ugly you are compared to me." 24 hours later, I watched her pack up her modeling portfolio as security escorted her out of the agency. The same agency I'd secretly owned for 3 years. She still doesn't know it was me who fired her. If you've ever been told you weren't pretty enough, smart enough, or successful enough by someone who should love you unconditionally, this story is for you. Drop a comment about where you're watching from. I love connecting with people who understand that sometimes the sweetest revenge is just letting people show you exactly who they are. My name is Madison Hayes, and I'm 28 years old. For most of my life, I believed I was the ugly duckling in a family of swans. Today, I know better. But getting here cost me everything I thought I wanted and gave me everything I actually needed. Growing up in the Hayes household meant living in the shadow of perfection. Not my perfection, Fiona's. My younger sister, 25 and stunning in that effortless way that makes photographers weep, had been the family's golden child since she took her first breath. Where I was average height with unremarkable brown hair and what my mother diplomatically called interesting features, Fiona was tall, blonde, and blessed with the kind of bone structure that launched careers. And launch a career it did. By 18, Fiona was signed with elite modeling agency, walking runways in Milan and gracing magazine covers across Europe. By 21, she was the face of 3 major cosmetic brands. By 23, she'd bought a penthouse in Manhattan and a beach house in the Hamptons. I, meanwhile, had graduated summa cum laude from business school and was working my way up through the corporate world. But in the Hayes family hierarchy, a business degree meant nothing compared to a Vogue cover. Madison's always been the smart one, my mother would say at family gatherings, and somehow she made intelligence sound like a consolation prize. Not everybody can be blessed with Fiona's gifts. The gifts. As if being beautiful was something Fiona had earned through hard work rather than genetic lottery. Our father was no better. David Hayes, a successful real estate developer, measured worth in terms of visibility and prestige. Fiona's modeling career brought glamour to the family name. My corporate achievements brought nothing he could brag about at the country club. Fiona's on the cover of Harper's Bazaar this month, he'd announced to anyone within earshot. Our little supermodel. When people asked about me, the response was always vague. Madison's doing well. Very practical. Good with numbers. Good with numbers. Like I was an accountant instead of someone building something significant. The casual cruelty started early and never stopped. Family photos where I was positioned in the back or cropped out entirely. Birthday parties where all the attention went to whichever magazine Fiona had just appeared in. Christmas mornings where her gifts were jewelry and designer clothes while mine were books and practical items. "We know you don't care about fashion," Mom would say, as if my lack of interest in clothes was a character trait rather than learned helplessness. But the worst part wasn't the neglect. It was the comments. The constant, casual observations about my appearance that chipped away at my self-worth like water on stone. "Maybe if you tried harder with your makeup," Fiona would suggest, studying my face with the clinical detachment of someone evaluating livestock. "Or did something different with your hair. The mousy brown doesn't really work." "Fiona's just trying to help," Mom would add. She knows about these things. By the time I turned 25, I'd developed an armor of indifference. I dressed professionally but plainly. I kept my hair in simple styles that required minimal maintenance. I focused on work because work didn't judge my appearance or find me lacking. What my family didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd been building something extraordinary while they were focused on Fiona's latest photo shoot. It started with a freelance consulting job for a struggling modeling agency in Chicago. They were hemorrhaging money, losing clients, and facing bankruptcy. I spent 6 months restructuring their operations, renegotiating contracts, and implementing new business strategies. When I finished, they were profitable for the first time in 3 years. Word spread. Other agencies started calling. I developed a reputation as the woman who could save dying modeling businesses. I worked nights and weekends, building a consulting firm that specialized in fashion industry turnarounds. By 26, I'd saved 17 agencies from bankruptcy. By 27, I was buying them. Hayes Fashion Consulting became Hayes Fashion Holdings. Through a complex web of shell companies and private equity partnerships, I quietly acquired controlling interests in agencies across the country. Not the big names, those were too established, too expensive. But the mid-tier agencies that represented working models, the ones who booked catalog shoots and regional campaigns. Including, as of 18 months ago, Elite Modeling Agency. The same agency that had launched Fiona's career and still represented her. The acquisition had been purely business. Elite was underperforming, their client roster was aging, and they were losing market share to newer, more agile competitors. It was a perfect target for the kind of operational overhaul I specialized in. I'd installed a new management team, streamlined operations, and began rebuilding their client base. The agency was thriving under the new structure, though they had no idea their mysterious new owner was Madison Hayes, the plain sister of one of their star models. The irony was delicious, but I kept it to myself. Revenge hadn't been the goal, success had been. But sometimes success and revenge were the same thing. For 3 years, I'd maintained this double life. To my family, I was still just Madison, the one with the boring corporate job who couldn't be bothered to dress properly. To the fashion industry, I was M. Hayes, the brilliant consultant who could turn around any failing agency. The compartmentalization was perfect until our family reunion last month. Every year, the Hayes clan gathered at our parents' estate in Connecticut for what Mom called our annual celebration of family. In reality, it was an excuse for extended relatives to gawk at Fiona's latest achievements while I faded into the background. This year was supposed to be different. This year, I'd planned to tell them about my business success. Not the full truth, I wasn't ready for that level of vulnerability, but enough to earn some recognition, some respect. I'd prepared a casual announcement about my consulting firm's growth, maybe mention a few high-profile clients. Nothing dramatic, just a simple acknowledgement that I'd built something worthwhile. I should have known better. The reunion was held in the main house's grand salon, with 50-plus relatives scattered across antique furniture and Persian rugs. Fiona held court in the center of the room, wearing a flowing white dress that photographed beautifully against the dark wood paneling. She was fresh off a campaign for a major jewelry brand, and the family couldn't stop talking about it. "Tell them about the commercial," Aunt Lily gushed. "With the waterfall and the diamonds." Fiona launched into a detailed description of the shoot, complete with behind-the-scenes stories about the famous photographer and the exotic location. Everyone hung on her every word. I sat in a corner armchair, wearing a simple navy dress and cardigan, waiting for the right moment to share my own news. I'd even prepared a few talking points about the challenges of business consulting and the satisfaction of helping companies succeed. The moment never came. Instead, what happened was so much worse. "Madison looks tired," I heard Cousin Jenna whisper to her mother. "She's really let herself go." "She's always been the plain one," came the response. "Some people just aren't blessed." I pretended not to hear, focusing instead on my phone where I was reviewing emails from 3 different agency acquisitions in progress. While they gossiped about my appearance, I was literally building an empire. The breaking point came during dinner. We were seated at the massive dining room table, 25 people sharing stories and catching up on family news. Fiona sat at Mom's right hand, naturally, while I was relegated to the far end with the teenagers and distant cousins. I have some exciting news, I announced during a lull in the conversation, my voice carrying clearly down the long table. A few heads turned in my direction. Most people kept eating. My consulting business has been growing rapidly, I continued, trying to project confidence. We're actually expanding into new markets and, oh, Madison, Fiona interrupted with a laugh. Still talking about your little hobby business? The dismissal was casual, automatic. Like swatting away a fly. It's not a hobby, I said, keeping my voice steady. We're handling some major clients, restructuring operations for, that's nice, dear, Mom interjected, not even looking in my direction. But we were talking about Fiona's appearance. Tell them about the yacht party. And just like that, I was invisible again. The conversation flowed around me as if I'd never spoken, returning to Fiona's glamorous life while my achievements evaporated into irrelevance. I finished my dinner in silence, plans for revelation crumbling like overcooked pastry. But the real humiliation was still coming. After dinner, we gathered in the living room for coffee and dessert. I'd retreated to a quiet corner with my laptop, ostensibly checking emails but actually reviewing contracts for 2 agency acquisitions that would close next week. Madison, Uncle Chase called out suddenly. Come over here. We want to ask you something. I closed my laptop and walked over to where a cluster of relatives had formed around Fiona. She was showing them photos from her latest shoot on her phone, each image more stunning than the last. We were just talking about genetics, Aunt Vanessa said with the kind of smile that meant trouble. How interesting it is that 2 sisters can be so different. Fiona giggled. I know, right? People always ask if we're actually related. Fiona gets all the beauty genes, Uncle Chase said, as if I wasn't standing right there. Madison got the, what did you get, kiddo? The brains? They all laughed, but it wasn't kind laughter. It was the sort of laughter that meant they found the idea of me having anything valuable to be amusing. Actually, I said, my voice tight but controlled, I've been quite successful in my field. My company has grown significantly over the past few years. Oh, we know you work hard, Aunt Lily said patronizingly. That's wonderful. But Fiona here is an international supermodel. She's been in Vogue 17 times. 18, Fiona corrected, preening. The point is, Uncle Chase continued, some people are born to be looked at, and some people are born to do the looking. Nothing wrong with either one. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. They weren't trying to be mean, this was just how they saw the world. Beautiful people and everyone else. Winners and losers. Stars and background characters. I was about to excuse myself when Fiona delivered the killing blow. Honestly, she said, looking me up and down with that clinical assessment I'd endured my entire life, it's embarrassing how ugly you are compared to me. The room went quiet. Not shocked quiet, embarrassed quiet. Like Fiona had said something true but inappropriate. I mean, she continued, oblivious to the discomfort she'd created, I love you, Madison, but you really should try harder. The mousy hair, the boring clothes, the complete lack of style. If you're going to be around successful people, you should at least make an effort not to look so plain. 25 people heard her say it. 25 members of my family watched her tear me down for sport and said nothing. I stood there for a moment, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation, the childhood shame I'd thought I'd overcome. Then I did what I always did, I smiled politely and excused myself. I should get going, I said quietly. Early morning tomorrow. Of course you do, Fiona said dismissively. Work, work, work. No wonder you can't find a husband. I walked to my car with their laughter echoing behind me. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't just hurt, I was done. The drive back to my apartment in Manhattan gave me 2 hours to think. 2 hours to process what had happened and decide what to do about it. By the time I reached the city, my decision was made. I'd spent years hiding my success, downplaying my achievements, trying to fit into their narrow definition of family harmony. I'd let them believe I was ordinary because it was easier than dealing with their resentment of my success. But Fiona had crossed a line. The casual cruelty, the public humiliation, the assumption that she could treat me like garbage because she was prettier, it ended now. I pulled out my phone and called Julian Chen, my business manager and the only person who knew the full extent of my holdings. Madison? It's late. Is everything okay? I need you to prepare termination paperwork for Fiona Hayes at Elite Modeling, I said without preamble. Silence on the other end. Then, your sister? Yes. Madison, are you sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back. Your family will know you own the agency. I thought about Fiona's words. About the laughter. About 25 years of being treated like a consolation prize in my own family. I'm sure. And Julian? Make sure it's public. Very public. How public are we talking? Industry newsletter public. Trade publication public. Make sure everyone knows why she was terminated. Another pause. What's the official reason? Conduct unbecoming. Specifically, a pattern of unprofessional behavior that reflects poorly on the agency's values and commitment to treating all individuals with dignity and respect. That's actually perfect. Professional but damning. I'll send you the details in an email. I want this handled tomorrow. Madison, once this gets out, your family will know everything. Your business, your holdings, your success. Are you prepared for that? I looked up at my apartment building, at the life I'd built while they were dismissing me as plain and unremarkable. Julian, I've been hiding my light under a bushel for 3 years because I was afraid of how they'd react to my success. Tonight I realized something, I don't care how they react anymore. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The first call was from Mom. Madison, what is this about Fiona being fired? She's hysterical. She says it's some kind of mistake. I let it go to voicemail. The second was from Dad. Madison, call me immediately. This is affecting the family business. People are asking questions. Also voicemail. The third was from Fiona herself, and I answered it. Madison, she shrieked before I could say hello. You have to help me. Some crazy woman fired me from Elite and she's telling everyone I'm unprofessional. You know people in business, can you call them and straighten this out? I'm sorry to hear that, Fiona, I said calmly. What exactly happened? They said I violated their code of conduct. Can you believe that? Me. I've been their top model for 7 years, and suddenly they're talking about dignity and respect. It's insane. What specifically did they say you did? Nothing. Just some bullshit about treating people badly. Like, I never treat anyone badly. I'm always nice to the photographers and the other models, and what about family members? Silence. Then, what does that have to do with anything? The termination letter mentioned a pattern of unprofessional behavior that reflects poorly on the agency's commitment to treating all individuals with dignity and respect. That sounds like it might include how you treat family. That's ridiculous. What I say to my family has nothing to do with my modeling career. Are you sure about that? More silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Madison, do you know something about this? Because if you do, you need to fix it right now. My career is everything to me. I'm sure it is, Fiona. Just like my career is everything to me. Your consulting thing? Madison, this is serious. I could lose everything. So could I. Every time you and the family tear me down, every time you call me ugly or plain or embarrassing, you're attacking something I've worked very hard to build. That's different. You know I don't mean it personally. How is it different? Because you're beautiful and I'm not. Because your career matters and mine doesn't? Madison, you're being ridiculous. Can you help me or not? I looked out my office window at the city skyline, at the world I'd conquered while she was busy being photographed. Actually, Fiona, I think I can help you understand what happened. Thank God. I knew you'd, the woman who fired you? Hayes? She's the owner of Elite Modeling Agency. Has been for 18 months. So? What does that have to do with, my name is Madison Hayes, Fiona? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. What are you saying? She finally whispered. I'm saying I own Elite Modeling Agency. I own 7 modeling agencies, actually, along with 3 talent management companies and a fashion consulting firm that's expanded into 12 countries. That's impossible. Is it? You've spent so many years assuming I was ordinary that you never bothered to actually look at what I was doing. While you were posing for pictures, I was building an empire. You're lying. I pulled up the Forbes article that had run 6 months ago about emerging entrepreneurs in the fashion industry. My photo was prominently featured alongside a detailed breakdown of my business holdings. Check your email, I said, sending her the link. Forbes called me one of the most influential people in fashion business under 30. Funny how you missed that. I heard her phone ping, then silence as she read the article. Oh my God, she breathed. The woman you called ugly and embarrassing? She controls the careers of over 300 models across 7 agencies. Including yours. Or rather, including what used to be yours. Madison, I didn't know, of course you didn't know. You never bothered to ask. None of you did. For 3 years, you've been mocking my little hobby business while I was quietly buying the very agency that made your career possible. This is insane. You can't fire me because I hurt your feelings. I didn't fire you because you hurt my feelings, Fiona. I fired you because you demonstrated a pattern of behavior that's incompatible with our agency's values. What behavior? Publicly humiliating people based on their appearance. Treating family members with casual cruelty. Assuming your success gives you the right to tear others down. I paused. Sound familiar? But I'm your sister. Yes, you are. Which makes your behavior even more disappointing. The call devolved into screaming after that. Threats, accusations, desperate pleas. I listened with the detached calm of someone who'd finally stopped caring about earning approval from people who'd never respected her in the first place. When she hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. The fallout was swift and comprehensive. Within hours, the story had spread through the modeling industry. Elite model fired for unprofessional conduct ran in 3 trade publications. The fashion blogs picked it up next, then the gossip sites. By afternoon, it had made the mainstream news. Supermodel's secret sister revealed as fashion industry power player was trending on 3 platforms. The story had everything: sibling rivalry, hidden success, corporate drama, and a satisfying comeuppance for someone who'd been publicly cruel. The internet ate it up. My phone didn't stop ringing. Interview requests, business opportunities, congratulations from colleagues who'd had no idea about my family connection to Fiona Hayes. But the most interesting calls came from other models, Girls who'd worked with Fiona over the years and had stories to tell about her behavior behind the scenes. She was always so mean to the new girls, one former elite model told me. She'd make comments about their weight, their skin, their backgrounds. We all knew she was cruel, but she was too big a name to complain about. Another said, she treated the assistants and crew like garbage. I saw her make a makeup artist cry because her coffee wasn't hot enough. Pattern of behavior. Just like I'd suspected. The family intervention came 3 days later. They arrived at my office unannounced, Mom, Dad, Fiona, and Uncle Chase as moral support. My assistant buzzed to warn me, and I had security escort them to the conference room where I met them 20 minutes later. They looked smaller than I remembered. Diminished somehow. Madison, Dad started, we need to talk about this situation with Fiona. There's nothing to discuss, I replied, taking my seat at the head of the conference table. The termination was handled according to company policy. Company policy? Mom's voice cracked. She's your sister. She's also a former employee who violated our code of conduct. This is about last weekend, isn't it? Fiona spoke for the first time, her eyes red from crying. About what I said at the reunion? It's about what you've said my entire life. Last weekend was just the final straw. Uncle Chase leaned forward, trying his businessman voice. Madison, this seems like an overreaction. Family disputes shouldn't affect professional relationships. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. These are complaints filed against Fiona by other models, photographers, and crew members over the past 2 years. 14 formal complaints about unprofessional behavior, including harassment, verbal abuse, and creating hostile work environments. They stared at the papers in shock. I didn't know about these when I acquired Elite, I continued. If I had, the termination would have happened 18 months ago. You can't destroy her career over this, Dad demanded. She's made one mistake, 14 documented mistakes. Plus a lifetime of treating me like garbage because I don't fit your definition of valuable. Mom started crying. We never meant to make you feel that way. Yes, you did. Every time you introduced Fiona as our supermodel daughter and me as Madison, you made your priorities clear. Every time you laughed at her insults or agreed that I should try harder with my appearance, you endorsed her behavior. We thought you didn't care about those things, Dad said weakly. I didn't care about modeling or fashion or being photographed. I cared about being respected by my own family. There's a difference. Fiona finally spoke up. Madison, I'm sorry. I really am. I never realized, you never realized because you never bothered to look. For 3 years, while you were calling my business a hobby, I was building something extraordinary. You could have asked what I did, could have shown interest in my success, could have treated me like someone worth knowing. I know that now, she whispered. Now that I have power over your career. How convenient. The room fell silent except for Mom's quiet sobbing. What do you want? Dad finally asked. Money? A public apology? What will it take to fix this? I looked around the table at my family, these people who'd shaped my childhood, defined my self-worth, and taught me that love was conditional on meeting their narrow standards of value. I don't want anything from you, I said quietly. I used to want your respect, your recognition, your approval. I spent years trying to earn something you were never going to give me. We can give it now, Mom said desperately. We're so proud of what you've accomplished. No, I interrupted. You're scared of what I've accomplished. There's a difference. I stood up, gathering my papers. Fiona's termination stands. Her conduct with Elite was unprofessional, and her treatment of colleagues was unacceptable. This isn't personal revenge, it's business accountability. Madison, please, Fiona begged. Modeling is all I know. It's all I am. I paused at the door. No, Fiona. Modeling is what you do. Who you are is someone who thinks beauty gives you the right to be cruel. Until you figure out the difference, you'll keep having these problems. I left them in the conference room and went back to my office, where 17 new business opportunities were waiting in my inbox. 6 months later, the dust had settled into a new reality. Fiona never found another major agency willing to represent her. Word traveled fast in the fashion industry, and my companies weren't the only ones who'd received complaints about her behavior. She was quietly blacklisted, not for lack of talent, but for being too difficult to work with. She started an Instagram account focused on lifestyle content, trading on her former fame to sell sponsored products. It was profitable but humbling, a far cry from international campaigns and magazine covers. My parents tried to rebuild our relationship, but it felt forced and awkward. They invited me to dinners where they asked careful questions about my business and complimented my success in ways that felt rehearsed. They'd learned to be proud of me, but only after I'd proven I had the power to hurt them. The extended family split into camps. Some rallied around Fiona, claiming I'd overreacted and destroyed her life out of jealousy. Others reached out privately, sharing their own stories of being overlooked or dismissed, expressing gratitude that someone had finally stood up to the family's casual cruelty. But the most unexpected consequence was the flood of messages from strangers who'd seen the story and connected with it. Women who'd been called ugly by beautiful sisters, overlooked by parents who favored more conventionally attractive children, dismissed as the smart one as if intelligence was consolation for not being pretty enough. "Thank you for showing us that we don't have to accept being diminished," one woman wrote. "Your success is proof that our worth isn't determined by other people's narrow definitions." I started speaking at business conferences about entrepreneurship, but the questions always came back to family dynamics and self-worth. How do you build confidence when your own family doesn't believe in you? How do you succeed when success is defined by other standards? The answers were hard-won wisdom. You define your own worth. You build your own support system. You refuse to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. And sometimes, you use your success to protect others from the same cruelty you endured. My agencies implemented new policies about workplace behavior and respect. Models who'd been afraid to report harassment or abuse now had clear channels and protections. The culture shifted from tolerating diva behavior to demanding professionalism from everyone, regardless of their booking history or magazine covers. 3 months after Fiona's termination, a young model approached me at an industry event. "Ms. Hayes? I just wanted to thank you. I heard you fired someone for being mean to other models, and it made me feel safer to speak up when an older model was bullying me during a shoot." That conversation was worth more than any family reconciliation could have been. A year later, I received an unexpected text from Fiona. "I've been in therapy for 6 months. You were right about everything. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I'm working on becoming someone worthy of your forgiveness." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I hope you find peace with yourself, Fiona. That's what matters most." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it wasn't hatred either. It was something harder and more mature, acceptance that some relationships can't be repaired, only redefined. The moment Fiona realized that her ugly sister owned the very agency that had made her career possible was everything I'd never known I needed. The silence on that phone call, the dawning comprehension, the shift from dismissive cruelty to desperate pleading, it was 3 years of hidden success finally demanding recognition. But the real satisfaction wasn't in her shock. It was in the aftermath, when the fashion industry rallied around the story of accountability over beauty, when other models found courage to speak up about mistreatment, When young women reached out to say they'd stopped accepting cruelty disguised as family love. I'd spent my life being told that beauty was everything, that my worth was measured by appearance rather than achievement. In the end, building something meaningful proved more valuable than being photographed. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally love us with the most conditions of all. Learning to value yourself when your own family doesn't is the hardest lesson anyone can learn. But once you learn it, nobody can teach you to be small again. Have you ever been dismissed by people who were supposed to support you? Share your story in the comments. I love hearing how people found their strength after being underestimated. If you believe that success is the best response to people who try to diminish you, hit that subscribe button. Remember, your worth isn't determined by other people's limited imagination of who you could become.